little sideways, but it'll do. It'll do. Where's Jack? Jack.
Mic check. Mic check. Hello. Hello. Hello.
And if you guys have tape in your bags,
Yeah.
I was like, 20 cameras. Someone's gonna have tape.
后来你也没再见着他吗？
对，后来没有了，
躺了几个月医院，
就是。
Right here.
那所以我们为为这边演讲者可以麻烦你们坐站这边啊。然后是 supporters 的话，那麻烦你们
Just a couple steps back, like right here.
对对对
Perfect.
太好了。
Guys, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
有人帮我看着我的兜子。
啊，我委托了。
委托了。生怕被包
太别帮你。
啊，好。这站会不会时间太长？
坚持。
现在能站最长能站多久？20分钟？
不行，10分钟差不多。
好，来，咱们反正。
我也站这儿。啊，来吧，要吗？没关系。
咱们4个，来吧。上回你生日，你看我都没过了。
在这儿。今天生日你没
不在你家吃了一顿。
对。
好，你发给我。
录像都出来了。我说李恒清，因为贪图你的这个菜好吃。
那不是他做的呀。
谢谢。
谢谢。赵状元太。
还确实做的好。
你做的，
真的做的好。我觉得那鸭子特别好。
过去还不参照你照。
我回家就做了一次，我遭到了我爸妈的这一致好评，是吗？
爸爸妈妈是那里头还是自家好。
来，看到我拿这里。
I'm there. It's been 2 minutes. I always forget.
他是读美，from California， 对对对对。
Yeah, we're very glad he's talking about your stand on China and all the issues. Oh, yeah.
I have a new car and I think I moved to Los Angeles.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Thank you
I
very
have
much
a
for
new
coming.
museum.
Hi, good to see you.
Hi, good afternoon.
What kind of contract?
There she is.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, good speech yesterday.
Oh, gosh, where was it? I don't think I was able to stay the whole time. Right? I left.
I left too. I mean, I like, there was three members showed up. I mean, you showed up. That was fantastic.
So it was Swazi, myself, and Wilson.
Joe Wilson showed up.
Yeah. I wanted to stay and listen to Mission, but they went straight into the panel discussion.
It was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't more than the book. If you, maybe I don't know.
I did.
But
No, she gave me
it's
an
good.
advanced copy.
Advanced copy. But it was good yesterday.
Thank you. You know their struggle, so it's...
Yeah, and where is it? Anytime. Where's the meter? Whatever you need. Thank you. Thank you.
I know the house, yeah. So it's in the Senate. Is there a Senate for young people?
I believe. Well, if not, we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I might be able to help with that.
Let me follow up. Shine Lee is my chief director.
Yeah, no shine. Get out of your way.
Hello. I was following you there. Oh, wait.
That's great. Henry.
Nice to back in.
Yeah, we gotta grab coffee sometime.
Okay.
Hey,
I'll be the house.
You support her.
Right? You're moving up.
It helps,
I think we're going to be
the voters.
staff signing off to a bill. We have to run a show.
Yes. We're going to start by opening remarks.
Not to Raja. I think he's here right now. I'm warm. Yeah, I'm hot.
We all have dark skin.
It's John.
John's, I think John's on
I
his.
saw the opening. You
Yeah.
and John are doing it.
Okay, very good.
It's a larger print.
So, we've got to run a show or Raja. I don't have this place.
Hey, buddy. Hey, you look at you. With the glasses?
Well, it's because
Oh, they automatic. They're automatic.
hello. Good.
Show on the road.
Hi, how are you? Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's our museum just moved to the Los Angeles.
Oh, wonderful.
We can get support from the committee.
Thank you.
June 4th.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here today to mark this solemn occasion. I'm grateful to my colleagues on the Select Committee, Democrats and Republicans alike, for their dedication to exposing the truth about the CCP and standing with the Chinese people. 36 years ago today, thousands of students and workers gathered in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to demand democracy. The Chinese Communist Party responded not with dialogue, but with tanks. They crushed the call for freedom under steel treads and silence. And to this day, the CCP continues to erase the memory of that moment, just as it tries to erase the voices of those who dare to speak out. The Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party exists for a reason. We're not in a strategic competition with the Chinese people. We are in a competition with the regime that holds them hostage. For 76 years, the CCP's greatest victims have been the Chinese people themselves. Millions dead and millions more living under fear, censorship, and repression. Even the act of remembering Tiananmen can get you thrown into a Chinese prison today. But we remember. We remember the students who held up banners calling for reform, the workers who refused to leave, the man who stood in front of a tank and reminded the world what courage looks like. We also remember that the CCP still fears its own people. It still arrests dissidents, censors truth, and crushes any sign of resistance. From the Uyghur genocide to the crackdown in Hong Kong to the persecution of house churches, the oppression continues. And yet, so does the resistance. Brave men and women inside and outside China are keeping the light of liberty alive. Many are with us today, and to them we say, we see you, we hear you, and we stand with you. That's why we will continue taking action, including here at home. Later today, many members of this committee will call on Washington, D.C. to end its sister city relationship with Beijing, a symbolic but important step in rejecting CCP propaganda and standing with the people of China, not its oppressors. Congress is united on that message. We will continue to expose the CCP's abuses, support those working for freedom, and ensure that the world never forgets what happened in Tiananmen Square. Thank you, and I'll now hand the mic to my colleague and our ranking member, Raja Krishnamurthy. Raja?
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of my colleagues for joining today. 36 years ago, we saw what the picture of courage in the face of tyranny looks like. It's one man, one person. He doesn't have a title. He doesn't have a megaphone. He doesn't have a social media following. He doesn't have weapons. All he has is his convictions. That's all he's got. And his convictions cause him to stand in front of a row of tanks. Ultimately, he became known as Tank Man, but to the rest of us, he represents freedom. He represents freedom. The old saying is, the secret to happiness is freedom, and the secret to freedom is courage. So he represents not only freedom, he represents courage. Today we remember those with courage who stood and fell in Tiananmen Square, and those who continue to fight across China and the world for their freedom. Because the tools of repression may have changed. Cameras instead of clubs, algorithms instead of batons. But the goal of the CCP remains the same. To silence dissidents, to silence dreams, and to deny the basic dignity of its own people. We've seen it in the surveillance state in Xinjiang and the genocide against the Uyghurs. We've seen it in Hong Kong, where one country, two systems has become one party, no freedom. We've seen it from Tibet to Inner Mongolia, where citizens are punished for speaking their language and praying how they wish. Even here in the U.S., students and dissidents are harassed and threatened by CCP proxies for simply speaking out. That's why we're here. Not just to remember, but to reaffirm. We stand for democracy, we stand for human rights, and we stand with that lone figure in front of a row of tanks. His courage did not stop a regime, but it started something stronger. A movement, a memory, and a mission. And that mission is ours now. Recently, I went to the CCP-controlled entity's LLM, large language model called DeepSeek. and I typed in the prompt in DeepSeek. I said, what happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989? And the response was, let's talk about something else. No, let's not talk about something else. June 4th, 2025, 36 years later, when a single man stand in front of a row of tanks and showed us what true courage in the face of tyranny looks like, we're going to remember him and the countless others who seek their freedom today. And now, I would like to have Mr. Wei Jingsheng, a true hero who was there on that fateful day, speak to us. Thank you.
谢谢大家。
Thank you.
你往这边站着。现在议论的一个热门话题是全球民主在衰退。
A hot topic of discussion now is about the global democracy's decline.
其实不是民主在衰退，是民主国家对各国人权民主运动的关心和支持在衰退，对专制国家和独裁者们的压力在衰退。
It is a fact not a democracy that is declining, but the concern and support of a democratic country for human rights and democracy is declining. The pressure on authoritarian government and the dictator is declining. Therefore, various authoritarian
于是各种专制政权和独裁势力更加猖狂地镇压人民和民主运动和人权运动，看上去就像是民主在衰退。
Therefore, various authoritarian regimes and the dictatorial forces are more rampant in suppressing people's democratic and human rights movement. It looks like the democracy is declining.
民主在衰退，影响的仅仅是其他国家的人民吗？不是，民主国家也会受到不同程度的影响。
Does the decline of a democratic concern affect only the people in the other countries? No, democratic countries will also be affected in various degrees.
恐怖主义猖狂行动背后的舆论支持，就来自全球民主的衰退。专制国家的人权民主活动逐渐消失，民主国家在国际舆论上受到的压力也在逐渐加大，这已经是一个外交上的难题了。
The public opinion support behind the rampant terrorist actions come from the decline of global concern for human rights. The human rights and democracy activities in authoritarian countries are gradually disappearing, and the pressure on democratic countries in international public opinion is also gradually increasing. This has become a difficult problem for Western democracies.
对此问题，谁的责任最大？当然是作为领袖的美国责任最大。
So what is the most responsible for the problem? Of course, the United States, as a leader, has the greatest responsibility.
值此6次天安门大屠杀36周年的纪念活动，我呼吁美国重新把人权外交提高到重要的议程，加大对各国人权民主运动的支持。
On the occasion of the 36th anniversary of the June 4th Tiananmen Massacre, I call on the United States to raise human rights diplomacy to an important agenda again and increase support for human rights and democracy movement in various countries.
不只是口头上的支持，还要付诸实际行动，以此显示出美国的领导作用，停止全球民主衰退的趋势。
Not just verbal support, but also putting in practical actions. This action will demonstrate the leadership of the United States and stop the trend of global democracy decline.
谢谢在场的朋友们，希望把这个信息传达到更多的政治家和人民。
Thank you all for the friends present. I hope this message can be conveyed to more politicians and people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Wang Dan. I am former student leader in 1989. Thank you to the Select Committee and the honorable members of Congress for holding this event to show support for the Chinese democracy movement. 36 years ago, I, along with thousands of Chinese students and citizens, took to the streets and stood in Tiananmen Square, expressing our hopes for democracy. For the past 36 years, I have kept thinking about one question: what made us take that action back then? Now, I finally have my own answer, and the answer is very simple: hope. Yes, we stood up because we had great hope for our country, for our society, and for the future of democracy. It was hope that brought us to the streets. If the Tiananmen democracy movement left behind any legacy, one of them is this: hope. 36 years has passed. China has changed a lot. One of the deepest and most serious change is that many Chinese people have lost hope on their country, in their society, and in the future. Some even feel completely hopeless. That is why so many have chosen to leave. But I believe that today, as we remember the 1989 movement, we want to tell the world, if we give in to despair, we give up everything. Only if we hold on to hope can China have a future and democracy have a chance. I believe the United States, as a leader of a free world, has a moral responsibility. I call on the United States to send a strong and clear message to the Chinese people that America wants to see a democratic China, that America support the Chinese people's right fight for democracy, and that America stand with the people of China, not with the Chinese Communist Party. Such a message, I believe, would greatly inspire the Chinese people and help them to rebuild hope. And as a side, hope is the true driving force of any democracy movement. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Mr. Wei Jingsheng and Mr. Wang Dan for joining us and sharing your story as you stood on that Tiananmen Square and being, peacefully protesting for freedom, democracy, fighting to crack down on the government corruption, only to be met with the harsh military crackdown. And you saw many of your colleagues being taken and being murdered. That was truly a Tiananmen Square massacre that happened 36 years ago. And so I want to thank the members of the media for covering this event today. Today marks the 36 years since that Tiananmen Square massacre, when brave students were met face to face with China's People's Liberation Army for peacefully protesting for political and economic reform. We saw on that day the lengths which CCP leaders are willing to go to keep their power and control their people. But we shouldn't be surprised. They torture Uyghurs in modern-day concentration camps. They throw Hong Kongers in jail for speaking out. They conduct mass surveillance of their own people, steal our intellectual property, and gaslight our friends and allies. And that just scratches the surface. And the fact that they deny Tiananmen Square to this day is even more telling. We must take their words and actions as they are, push back against their human rights abuses, and support freedom and human rights around the world. I want to send a message that our hearts remain with the victims, and their legacy reaffirms our fight to uplift those still trapped under CCP oppression and Mr. Wang Dan, as you said, we hear you, and our fight will not stop. We're going to continue to speak out, and today gave us that opportunity to do so, but it's not going to stop today. We're going to do this every day and remember, and we're going to do this on a continual basis. So as a member of the Select Committee on China, CCP, I promise, and my commitment to continue to stand with you and continue to fight with you. Thank you so much for having me. And I next bring up my colleague, Representative Dunn, to speak.
Well, thank you all for being here on the 36th anniversary of Tiananmen Square. What you see behind you is the best of America. It's not Republican or Democrat. It are people who believe in the voice of democracy, both those who are first generation and those who have been here for generations before. But what it is perhaps best at reflecting is the opposite of what communist China has perpetrated on its own people. It's not just the Uyghurs inside China who have been oppressed by the CCP, those in Tibet or those in Hong Kong. It is people the world over who fall victim to this type of regime that has only its own power as its only priority. Just today, Kash Patel, the head of the director of the FBI, highlighted multiple individuals who came into the United States perpetrated by communist China to enact biowarfare on the United States. Agroterrorism, as it's called, using students to leverage their research here in the United States against U.S. crops. Now, I'm just a farm kid from Iowa, but we have seen this time and time again. As an intelligence officer, and then as a counterintelligence officer who operated inside China, I saw this firsthand. But I saw it first in the farm fields of Iowa, where Chinese operatives came to the United States to literally steal corn out of the ground to thieve our intellectual property. Today, the Chinese Communist government uses that to steal the intellectual property of thousands of companies across the globe, including 3 major cyber attacks here on the United States. What this committee does is a reflection of what these individuals have been doing for decades, standing up and calling out China at every step. But the good news is there is a bright future, both for America and for the people of China. The bravery that was shown 36 years ago in the face of communist tanks is the same bravery that resides in China today. And it's the same fortitude we continue here in the United States. I know that working together, we have the opportunity not only to bring down communist China, but to bring up democratic-loving people around the world. With that, thank you for the committee, thank you to our chairman, and I'm proud to bring up a Democrat colleague from California, Mr. Rokon.
Aloha, everyone. Not Ro. Congresswoman Jill Tokuda from Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District. 36 years ago today, tanks rode through Tiananmen Square, but what shook the world wasn't the bloodshed or the gunfire. It was the people, ordinary individuals, unarmed but unstoppable, standing shoulder to shoulder with a simple call that echoes and resonates to this day. There were students, there were laborers, businessmen, soldiers, teachers, young and old, from all walks of life. They called for free press, for government accountability, for the right to assemble peacefully and express themselves freely. And above all, they came together for democracy. 36 years later, thousands more have carried that dream forward, despite the threats, the arrests, the torture, the forced disappearances, and the murder perpetuated by the Chinese Communist Party. They fight on because that dream of democracy, that desire for freedom, is not bound by class or caste. It's neither granted nor taught. It is human, it is innate, and it's worth fighting for. It's the real Chinese dream, spoken of in hushed conversations and kept alive by small unseen acts of resistance. The one that beats in the hearts of countless Chinese people who still yearn for freedom and reject the false promises of national rejuvenation peddled to justify the theft of their human rights. I remember wearing all black in high school on June 4th. I would tape pictures of the massacre on my shirt with the words "Never Forget" scrawled across my chest. At that time, it felt like a protest. Looking back now, I see that it was actually just the beginning of an understanding, that the fight for freedom and democracy isn't waged in a single day. It lives on in the choices we make, and the actions we take every single day. Today, as we remember those brave souls, we recognize that the battle for democracy continues. The weapons of tyranny have changed. They come now as disinformation, corruption, and hate. The wounds aren't always visible, but they are still very much real. Yet the courage to resist endures as well. So today we stand in solidarity with those who still march, who still hunger and thirst, who still believe in freedom and democracy in China. They remind us that democracy isn't a place we arrive at, it's a promise we keep. Dr. Sun Yat-sen, the founder of modern China, proudly educated in my home state of Hawaii, signed his last testament on his deathbed. He wrote then, "The revolution has not yet succeeded. Comrades, you must carry on." 100 years later, his words still ring true. For the martyrs of Tiananmen Square and their dream of democracy and freedom in China, we must carry on, and we are with you. Mahalo, everyone. And at this time, I call up Representative Newhouse.
Thank you, Congresswoman Takuda. Thanks to all of you for being here to help amplify these important voices. 36 years ago, the Chinese Communist Party, as well as the People's Liberation Army, murdered protesters that were standing up to the corrupt authoritarian regime. While we remember those that were lost in that tragedy, we cannot turn a blind eye to the fact that the CCP refuses to acknowledge the reality of the events on that day. They censor, they distort, they impose punishment on those that have the courage to speak the truth. This is the same CCP that uses fear and aggression to spread its influence across borders and across oceans, that stifles dissent and tightens its authoritarian grip on those in China that dream of a better world for themselves and for their families. The United States has a long history of setting example for others, an example that represents everything opposite of regimes like the CCP. That is why that we as policymakers and Americans must remain steadfast in our responsibility to be a beacon of freedom and liberty throughout the entire world. So I want to thank my colleagues, the members of the committee. I want to thank the people behind me and those that aren't here that are standing up for freedom in China. And I want to thank them for helping to shed light on the CCP's deception and gathering to remember the tragedy of Tiananmen Square. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Mr. Bilirakis of Florida.
Yes, thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. I'm Gus Bilirakis from the great state of Florida. Today we gather to remember the events of June 4th, 1989, a day that continues to resonate as a powerful testament to the human spirit's unyielding demand for dignity, freedom, and justice. 36 years ago in Tiananmen Square, thousands of students, workers, and everyday citizens stood together in peaceful protests, calling for democratic reform and greater political transparency in China. Armed only with their ideals and the courage to speak truth to power, they faced a government that refused to listen, unfortunately. The world watched in disbelief as that peaceful movement was met with violence, seared into global memory by the iconic image of one man standing alone before a column of tanks. Today, we honor the memory of those who lost their lives and the voices that were silenced. We also pay tribute to all who continue to speak out for freedoms in China and around the world, often at immense personal risk. Remembrance itself is an act of resistance. To remember is to proclaim, this happened. These lives mattered. Their dreams still matter. Sadly, the Chinese Communist Party continues to repress its own people and to ignore international law. In recent years, we have witnessed the dismantling of Hong Kong's civil liberties, the continued persecution and ethnic and religious minorities, including the Uyghurs, the Tibetans, and the Falun Gong practitioners, and increasingly aggressive behavior towards regional neighbors. China has violated international treaties, encroached upon sovereign borders at sea and on land, and engaged in deathly skirmishes, including the Indian frontier. Most egregiously, it has silenced whistleblowers and concealed critical information in early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, actions that had devastated global consequences. China must be held accountable for these violations. Throughout history, humanity has encountered many faces of injustice. Our brightest moments as an international community have come when we stood united against tyranny and repression. Our darkest hours have come when those who knew better chose silence over action, allowing injustice to spread unchecked. America must remain a beacon of principled leadership, grounded in the defense of human rights and democratic values. If we fail to speak out against the CCP's abuses, we abandon that responsibility and risk the erosion of the moral foundations of civil society. So today, on the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square tragedy, I am proud to stand not only in remembrance, but in resolve to speak truth, to defend human dignity, and to affirm that even in our darkest hours, hope for a freer, more justice world endures. Thank you.
Pardon me. My name is Chris Smith. I am co-chairman of the Congressional Executive Commission on China, and I thank you all for being here and for staying and to follow so many very eloquent speakers that have preceded me. You know, in early 1994, I met Wei Jingsheng in Beijing after the CCP briefly released him, only to be rearrested. He was such a high-value political prisoner that they thought they might get Olympics 2000 by releasing this amazing human rights champion. Well, we had dinner together. Right next to us was the Chinese secret police, looking on, listening in, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, when you kowtow, when you are weak and vacillating towards the Chinese Communist Party, they beat us more in prison. When you're tough, when you name names and you know what you're talking about, they beat us less. So this idea of accommodating the likes of Xi Jinping and others, and all the others over these years, has only led to more beatings, and of course nobody commits crimes like Xi Jinping and his ongoing genocide. Wei Jingsheng and Wang Dong are heroes, and we need to recognize them as that. They are just amazing people. We all remember 36 years ago, as all of us watched with hope, and I think Wang Dong hit it so well. You know, there is still hope. It's taken hits, but there is still hope that democracy will emerge and respect for human rights. Mothers lost sons, fathers lost daughters, and China lost, at least for a time, a very, very idealistic generation, but that has not gone away. It continues to this day. We remember this date each year because it's too important to forget, but also because it's too dangerous to recognize this date in communist China. Either you stand with the tank man or you stand with the tank. There is no middle ground. I remember when Cha Tian, the butcher of Beijing, was invited by the White House in the mid-1990s and was given a 19-gun salute. Went to the Army War College. Here's the guy that was the operational commander for Tiananmen Square Massacre. And he says to a group of officers who asked, how many died at Tiananmen Square? He said, no one. Within 2 days, I put together an emergency hearing. We had all these Chinese dissidents, Time magazine correspondents, who proved that was an absolute lie, and they continue that lie to this day. We invited Cha Tian to come and testify. We had an empty chair because he never showed up. Let me just say briefly, several of the colleagues talked about how important it is that we take action. Just a couple of weeks ago, the House passed my bill, stop forced organ harvesting, and it was a 406-1 vote. Totally bipartisan. And we're saying, stop what you're doing to these mostly Uyghurs and Falun Gong practitioners, average age 28, where when you need something for the market, because it's a billion-dollar industry, you find that person, kill them, take 2 to 6 of their organs, and then sell them to that person. This would criminalize that in a very, very serious way, up to 20 years in prison for anybody who's part of that supply chain, and hopefully the Senate will take this up. We passed it, like I said, overwhelmingly. I believe that someday China will be free. Someday the people of China will be able to enjoy all of their God-given human rights. And as a nation of free Chinese men and women, they will honor and celebrate the heroes of Tiananmen Square and all those who have sacrificed so much for so long for freedom. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, all of you, for coming, and for all those who participated today. And we remember Tiananmen, and we stand with the Chinese people, and we will never stop speaking the truth about the Chinese Communist Party. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
There will be a lot of issues.
Yeah, I already contacted the guy who replaced Xi Yue.
Oh?
Yeah, I leave the contact. Last year I